We need to find alternatives to material growth in solving difficult social problems. One of the responses to our book is that we can't stop growth while there are poor people. There will always be poor people. In fact, growth as it takes place today is opening the gap between the rich and the poor. In the United States, over the last 10 years, the difference in income between the rich and the poor has increased. Certainly that's been the case between the rich countries and the poor countries. Growth, as it's proceeding today, is not solving the distribution problem. It's only making it worse. It's concentrating wealth. It's time to quit hiding behind the presumed power of growth in solving that difficult problem and recognize it for what it is, a difficult ethical issue, one which can't be solved to everyone's satisfaction, but which must be solved better than it is today, and in ways other than by sustaining growth. We have to find other ways for people to feel some progress than through the accumulation of material goods. There are many things which are considered to be important to people. Certainly we can come to define a society where when you ask someone, how well off are you, he doesn't tell you how many cars he has and how many houses and so forth, but talks in other terms. We have to explore with different ways of doing things because it's impossible to decide ahead of time which is the best. And in fact, no one way will be best for all. I'd like to see a little city or a little community with some farmers and some small factories and so forth, where the medium of exchange was not dollars and price set through bidding, but in terms of the energy and the material content of the goods which are exchanged. That might turn out to have some very undesirable consequences, but I think it would teach us something about our own system. I'm encouraged by the efforts of some of the people in the youth movement and in the not-so-youthful movement to explore with new ways of structuring human interactions and giving up certain material goods. Those aren't solutions which everyone can accept. Like it or not, we are essentially an industrialized and urban population. But it's certainly worthwhile to experiment with different ways of doing things. On a more pragmatic level, we have to start looking at the role of old people in our society. There are going to be a lot more of them when population growth slows down. Not only that, their experience is likely to be more relevant as material growth begins to decline and change is not so rapid. Well, I could go on for a long time, and I think it's perhaps more useful for us to open up the conversation. So let me just close with a simple summary. Most of the reaction against the idea of material equilibrium is because we have no idea of what it could be. For the last 200 years, our personal goals, our social institutions, our economic science have all been predicated on the assumption of infinite and indefinite growth. That growth will stop. At least everyone in this room accepts as facts 5 things. Those 5 things say to me that growth will stop. Material growth. It's time then to make material equilibrium something which is known and understood. There are many different kinds of material equilibria towards which we could move. You don't necessarily have to have a dictatorship. You don't necessarily have to have a static condition of mankind. You don't necessarily have to put everybody back on the farm to have material equilibrium. Though I personally feel if we ignore the inevitability of material equilibrium, the one we end up with is much more likely to be a dictatorship, much more likely to be essentially agrarian, and much more likely to be static. Today, and perhaps for the next 10 years, we really have a unique chance. We have a tremendous momentum and a stock of resources which can be used in many different ways. We have technical resources and a good deal of expertise. They've only, I think, been directed in the wrong way. Everyone in this room could spend his own resources and direct his own skills and knowledge towards some useful aspect of understanding what are the promises and the potentials of material equilibrium. If even a few of you could adopt that, then I would say that was a very good response to limits to growth. Thank you.